make sure that if you are not a speaker, mute your audio so that we do not hear things we're not supposed to hear. We do not want to hear matters about your family will, or as it happened in Parliament. The members of Parliament were having their videos on, and just in the middle of this presentation by this honorable team, and during COVID, unaware, and behind him, the madam also not aware. Madam was going on her business, preparing to go to an important meeting, but she was in her natural clothes. And members kept on saying, Chief, please switch off please switch off your video. We don't want to see this, Chief. And the Chief was wondering what were they talking about. So please, if your video is on, make sure it's off. Do not want to see your family matters. If your audio is on, please switch it off unless you're a speaker. We don't want to hear your password to the bank. But for all intents and purposes, we'll be starting in the next 1 minute. We'll just ensure that people walk in. I will be starting in 3, 2, 1. As I said, my name is Ivan Penyane. I am the chairperson of the Drones Council of South Africa. The Drone Council of South Africa, for those that are not aware, was launched in July 2020. We have 10 chambers, and any South African is free to join the Drone Council. And our website address is as easy as dronecouncil.africa. Not drones, but dronecouncil.africa. You can go around, play there. There's a button on the top right that says Join Council. You join there. And this event is being recorded. It is live streaming on YouTube. This is event number 3 of 4, or let me say of 5. We started them early in November. We call them Drone Wednesdays. Every Wednesday, 2 p.m., we gather here with academics, with people in manufacturing, with members of the Drone Council. We gather with dronepreneurs. We gather with students from other institutions. And but after that, we load this to our YouTube channel. Just to recap, ladies and gentlemen, on the first week, we looked at emerging technologies. Drones, as we know that they are emerging technology. We just went down memory lane, looked at the emerging technologies of the past 50 years or so, but we just looked at 15 past emerging technologies, how they evolved to what they are today, for an example, and how long did they take them. And it was interesting from the research done, the difference between how it took aeroplanes, for an example, 68 years or so to reach the 50 million mark, whereas it took other technologies like Pokemon Go just 19 days. Some of these technologies now, they take hardly a week to reach 50 million users. And we are saying you cannot operate in the space of emerging technologies without understanding that emerging technologies will always be resisted. When, as I gave that example, that in the early days, many years ago, those that had horses thought that it was about managing my horse, making sure that my horse is safe, my horse is healthy. And when motor vehicles came, they were shocked. Who are these guys? And the first vehicles came without brakes. They came with a triangular wheels, etc., etc. So it happened with the emergence of the train, the emergence of the aeroplanes, the emergence of the internet, and so on. We'll know that the internet and GPS were first incubated in the army for many years, many years. And when they came to us and they boomed, we thought they were new, yet they were in emerging technologies that were incubated in the army. I never believed my lecturer when I was trying to explain to me an internet in, say, 1989, 90, when we're used to the facts, but now look, it's just every person has internet. Even my or my parents who are in their 90s know that there's an internet. So that is what we did in the first week. The second week, we looked at drones and the emerging technologies and what are the issues for 2023 and what are the issues for 2025. And we had a nice debate over 1.5 hours. Thank you to the audience that came. We had easily about 80 people, and it was very interesting audience. We learn every day. Therefore, today, we are, as you saw the poster, it's talking about drones and regulations. Everybody said, or everybody are in this space say, regulations are the major roadblock to the massification of the drone economy. Some say yes, in fact, regulations in how they come are a roadblock to commercialization of the drone industry. Some even go deeper to say, but traditionally, regulations, if not well managed, they are a roadblock or they can hinder innovation. And so those that are saying that looking at the growth, future growth of the drone economy will say, if it were not stringent regulations, the drone economy will be developing very fast. But ladies and gentlemen, don't we know really that there is when it comes to emerging technologies, so when it comes to innovation, that there is a permanent tension between regulation on the one hand and commercialization on the other, or put it differently, between innovation on the one hand and regulation on the other. That tension is a question of, aren't we over-regulating to an extent that we kill innovation? Or others are saying, aren't we over-innovating to an extent that we are undermining regulations? So we are going to be, now it's just about 2:10. I will go straight to, before we get our main speakers, I don't want you to die by PowerPoint. We have 3 blocks to this presentation, to today's event. The first block, we're going to be looking at expectations. There are a number of young people, a number of academics, a number of entrepreneurs who have been studying the area of the drone economy. Therefore, we will ask them the question, what about drone regulations? What is your issue about drone regulations? And they must unpack that, and they are split into, call it 2.1. If my opening was item number 1, item 2.1 will be 4 people who are part who are graduates, and they are currently being trained as dronepreneurs. That will be talking. It will be Thando Sithole, and followed by Bonge Kamsivi and Kululeko Makubane. They'll be talking, and then Sanele will speak. But they each have 1 minute. I'm asking them, they'll be asked the question, what is the problem about regulations from your experience as a new entrant in the drone industry? They'll speak for 1 minute each, and Sanele Kubeka will speak for about 3-4 minutes. That first block will be about 7 minutes, where they explain what do they think the problem is about regulations. The second block will be a team from GIBS who will introduce themselves, but they are leaders in their own right. As part of the programs, we are doing a drone project with them, and drone research. And I met them just 2 weeks ago. The last time we met, we were in India, and we agreed that they will definitely be participating here because for them, they are doing the research on these issues. So they will be also speaking. They will introduce themselves as I'll introduce them when we get to that time. That will be 2.2. And they'll also take about 5 to 7 minutes. The third block will be the students from VETS. As you will know that we're running a VETS program of masters and PhDs. They'll also be unpacking that. So these are not long speeches, about 5 minutes each. When I say 5 minutes, 5 minutes block one of 3 people will spend 5 minutes in total. And second one from Gibbs, they'll also spend about 5, maximum 7, and the VETS guys. So it will all be around 15 minutes of just unpicking what is the issue. And then after stating what the issue is, then there'll be a presentation by Mr. Sean Ledley and Ms. Kerry Enslin. Then we'll open it to the presentation. We don't want to keep people here every Wednesday at 2 p.m. and keep you ad infinitum. We will try our best that we keep it short and that people participate. I will now right away go to talk about expectations. What is your expectation of this event and what is the issue? And as I said, it's going to be Thando, Estole, Bongeka Msibi, and Kululeko Makubane. Thank you. Then it will be Sanele Kupeka. Back to back, ladies and gentlemen, then we'll take the next tranche, which is the VETS, the Gibbs tranche. Thank you. You go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to our weekly webinars. My name is Thando Tole, and I am an intern with the Drone Council of South Africa. As the Chair has introduced, we are in the internship program, which is now at its 6-month lead time. So one thing that we have constantly discussed, and one thing that I've noticed personally with our weekly webinars, is that the issue of regulations and accessibility comes up a lot. Unfortunately, local drone operators don't know their regulations very well. And what we tend to see is that in their research and in their quest to become drone operators, there's a lot of looking towards international flying standards or regulations, of which isn't really helpful to the local industry. So one thing that I see as a problem is that regulations should be made relatable. We should understand how they affect us directly. They should be made accessible. We need to easily find them, and they should be shared with everyone, not only people who are interested in the industry, but those who are in aligned industries such as mining, agriculture, just anyone open towards the drone industry. And again, this will just increase growth within the industry and allow for an inclusiveness to exist, of which at the end of the day, the fundamentals of drone flying and drone operating should be made accessible to everyone who is interested, who is in the industry, and again, going into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bongeka. Well, thank you, Thando. Then Bongeka now.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I myself I'm an intern at the Drone Council. And in all honesty, when I started with the program, I didn't know much about drones beyond recreational use. But as I've been part of this internship, I've learned a lot about the use of drones, opportunities that there are in different industries and sectors. And it's extremely eye-opening. The disadvantage, though, that I've noted is over time, as the more I learned about the regulations, the use of drones, I've seen that I know quite a few small businesses that are more in the photography and film side of the industry. However, they cannot afford.
Yeah, until the value this month,
Go ahead, madam. Go ahead, madam.
They cannot afford to get a drone pilot license and even afford to use ROCs to do their business in terms of drone flying, aerial photography specifically. So I know that they are most likely operating illegally, but due to the fact that the costs are extremely high and the access to these to being an ROC and to getting a drone pilot license, it's way too expensive for them. So my question would be, and I'm hoping that we can maybe receive the answer.
What's fun?
Receive the answer later in the presentations, is what does the future look like for small businesses in terms of drone piloting and being able to fly their own drones as a small business as opposed to going through an ROC? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kululego. Thank you very much, Bongega. The next one is Kululego. Yes, go ahead, Kululego.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Nkululeko Spamandla Makubane. I'm an intern with the Drones Council. As we've stated before, apart from the drones in general, regulations plays an important role in all the sectors, projects and programs of different paradigms. We can say they promote efficiency, effectiveness, and transparency within all these different paradigms. However, the drone regulations that actually have been passed for a few years. I think in 2015, in Part 101 by SA, Civil Aviation Regulations, they regard South Africa as the first country to actually implement them. They are now, we can say that it's hard for them to actually being implemented efficiently. Now the question lies amongst ourselves. So what is it that we can do to improve and fasten the drone regulations and law within South Africa and in global? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanele Ubega. Your expectations?
Chair. Thank you, Chair. Good day. I am Kupe Sanele, chamber within the Drone Council and also an intern of the Drone Council. Just to echo to what my colleagues have been speaking about, I think I'll be speaking to all 20 interns to say prior to being involved in the internship program, we only saw drones as for leisure purposes other than as an industry that we have not tapped into as South Africans. Over the past 6 months, we have learned a lot. We've been exposed to various capabilities of the drones. And I'll be speaking to all of us. The issue of regulations always comes to be at the center, mainly because we've learned that South Africa developed the regulations. However, we slept on them, did not do anything about them, we did not pass them. And then the rest of the world, especially here in Africa, if you look at Rwanda and Ghana, they took the regulations, they tweaked them there and there, they implemented them. Hence, the drone industry in those countries is booming. And the regulations, the way they're implementing them, they are much more enabling for various sectors to be able to use them. Unlike here in South Africa, where drones are still limited in terms of of who can be able to operate the drone commercially, where you can operate commercially, there's still a lot of red tapes. If you look at companies in South Africa that has ROCs, for example, I think their limitation is only 80 to 84. If you look at that 80 to 84, if I'm not mistaken, 90% of those companies are mainly widely owned. So again, challenge. So our speakers today will be able to probably paint us a picture to say, what are these drone regulations? What are these regulations? What are they about? Why must we have them? What is it that other countries, or what is it that we can learn from other countries? What is it that they've done better that we can more or less learn from them? And also, we also would like, in terms of the speakers today, to be able to share the picture to say, what are the challenges that new entrants faces when they're entering the industry, especially the drone economy? Is there a possibility probably of an ROC light, or what maybe the ROC light, what it should cover, and so forth. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanele Gubega, and thank you very much to the three speakers, our interns that have spoken. They came in as graduates with honors and master's degrees, and we are with us for 12 months, and we are working very hard to turn them from ordinary graduates to extraordinary dronepreneurs. And they have been going through a lot of grilling and a lot of assignments. They are doing stuff at the level of, they do sometimes have debates with their colleagues who are doing masters and PhD at VETS. That's how we're working on this team, because our take has been that we can't be complaining and hoping that skills will come from somewhere, but we'll have to grow our own timber. The next two blocks of 5 to 7 minutes will be with first the GIBS team, and then the VETS team. They are also just showing face today. When we come next week, next Wednesday, we'll go deeper into specific topics. This is Drone Wednesdays. We just wanted to have them. Today, they're only talking about what is the problem? What is the issue about regulations? And then they tell us their experiences, and they're just telling us the expectations. But in the next 2 Wednesdays, they will go into details. Because we're now changing gear, we're getting to academics, and we're getting to colleagues who are asking deeper questions. I will be the first one to say this issue of drones and the push called drone regulations. It is said by a few scholars like Elstrap Sangiovanni, who just released papers last year to say, hey, don't worry, man. This issue of drone governance, it's not complicated because it is complicated. But truth of the matter is that it is how it's been done. When drones have been around for the past 100 years. When they were commercialized in the past decade or so, most countries simply took what exists, traditional civil aviations that existed, and then tried to adapt. Therefore, the problem statement that they will put is that scholars have not given valuable attention to the international civil aviation governance issue. You can look at many scholars, they have not given attention to that. At the same time, they say, hey, civil aviation in its own has got complexity of layers, and there are various orders of institutional relationships. But unfortunately, scholars have not given that attention. That is why there'll be those debates. Therefore, a research gap that we are all dealing with is that how do we get out of this and ensure that knowledge is provided, not just as South Africa, but as Africa. And many of writings and articles are hardly Afro-focused. They are either Euro-focused or American-focused. That will be one of the issues. And then when we discuss next week, we'll be looking at how do we look at drone futures and stages of technological evolvement. So that is, I'm just setting the context to say, why are we working with various universities? The Drone Council has got what is called the DRIG, the Drone Research, Innovation and Knowledge Hub. The DRIG Hub is working with about 5 universities, and we are working with the TVET colleges sector. And if you follow us, it will be so exciting in the beginning to the mid next year, how these debates will go deeper. It will just not be debates for sake of debates, but it will be to help the country. Over to you, to colleagues from GIBS. You've got 5 to 7 minutes. Thereafter, it will be colleagues from VETS. May we go ahead?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Introduce yourself first, please.
My name is. Let me
are you able to
switch
show
on my
your face to
camera.
me? Yes, please.
Yes.
You can go ahead even if you are battling with the camera. It's okay.
It doesn't seem to be allowing me to switch
Okay,
on
go
my
ahead.
video.
Go ahead, Dumi.
Okay, so my name is Dumi Mwabe. I'm one of the GIBS delegates. We are obviously tasked to look into the drone technology and how it can help improve our transport industry. So basically, just to go straight to what I need to present here, I think our expectations, we just want to understand how viable it would be to have a separate body within the CAA with a set mandate to advance regulations and foster the operationalization of drone industry. And also, we also want to unpack the ambiguity around what a drone operator can and cannot do. So those are the two key things that we would like to get out of this engagement. So I'll hand over to Notando, my fellow delegates, and she can just introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good day, Chair. Thank you very much for creating this opportunity for us to be able to present and to get further insight into our research project, which really is looking at how the drone industry can become a fast tracker to, first of all, in terms of skills development and entrepreneurship development from that side. What we've come across is that as part of the TITA and GIBS program, which is looking at transport in the different various subsectors, all of my colleagues, we come from different areas within transport. For instance, I come in from the maritime sector, and we're looking in terms of from a scuba diving perspective. But when we look at the drone industry, really throughout the research process that we've got undertaken, we've found that, again, regulations, as it's been said before us, regulations are a sticking point. And really, one of the areas that we've uptaken to look into is the health sector. And the sponsor that we've been speaking to is the South African Blood Services, and how they're operating in terms of looking at creating a, a two-way pathway directional fly path. And how the regulations have become a sticking point in terms of getting the approval for them to be able to do that. Meanwhile, what it would mean is that South Africa would actually be a pioneer also in developing that kind of framework of having the two-directional fly path being available. So hence why we would like to, on the forum, to look at, would it be viable for the CAA to actually create the separate body that then looks at the drone regulations and fast tracking, as Dumi has put forward. And this is really just also because of the fact of what we've come across is that the regulations have kind of been a cut and paste from the manned aviation into the unmanned space. So that then creates a different kind of barrier and regulatory sort of standpoints and hard points that are a challenge. And so those are the sort of outlooks that we would like to get insight and information and unpacking from other delegates on the call. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Notando. Just to, as you're settling in, it will be interesting to also say that how does a scuba diver get interested in drones? It just shows the relationships of maritime and drones. And one day we will give you a chance to also talk about your experiences of swimming with the sharks. This lady might look so executive, but she swims with sharks. Let's go. That story for another day. For
Yes,
real, not swimming with sharks as an example. She does swim with sharks. Can we proceed? Thank you very much, Team Gibbs. The speakers have heard what you are expecting, but I am excited that you are raising controversial issues. That is the purpose of having webinars. That is the purpose of having these Drone Wednesdays. By the way, these debates have happened elsewhere because you are scholars again. You are challenging us to look at participatory approaches and to participate to change the landscape. I can declare, as we're sitting here, by the way, that not only do we have academics, dronepreneurs, small business people, friends, families, but we also have got people from the regulator sitting in the room, and members of the Air Service Licensing Council are in the room. We went to present and they gave us homeworks when we told them, yes, the industry is talking about these issues. Today, they surprised us. They quietly sneaked into the room and they're listening to us and these debates, and we'll be continuing with these debates to shape South Africa's success on the drone economy. Therefore, issue is that this participatory approach that have happened elsewhere successfully, can they really be successful? Can they really be successfully utilized in Africa? These are questions asked by various scholars like Ayamga last year, Sylvester in 2018, Elstrap Sangiovanni in 2021. Go ahead, guys, go help us as we proceed about what does research come up with. We will now go to the VETS team. Mr. Shadrach Korombi will also be talking about the expectations and questions from the VETS postgraduate team. Then we'll go straight to the presentations. Thank you very much. Mr. Shadrach Korombi.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. My name is Shadrach Korombi, and I am a master's student at VETS University. Today's topic is intriguing for me as my research focuses on exploring the challenges impeding the proliferation of drone technology within the AE sector, which is the architecture, engineering, and construction sector in South Africa. Therefore, we would expect today's webinar on regulations dialogue to address the challenges relating to the regulatory environment, be it how the regulatory environment is not able to change to adapt to the emergence and applications of drone technology, and thus failing to provide a supportive environment. Moreover, as industry newcomers, we would perceive the drones, the regulations and requirements from the CAA to obtain and maintain a drone license as a barrier, as has been noted and touched on by previous speakers. Drawing from the Drone Council Strat Plan 2021, version 11, we think that the top 3 priorities for the drone industry in the next 2 years should be a more focus on industry transformation. Secondly, to deliver in their purpose to actively play a role in enabling regulations that support and promote the drone technology. And lastly, to adopt practical strategies to improve their competitive advantage so as to be a bigger voice in drone technology dialogue across different stakeholders, for example, the government, regulations that will actually enable the drone economy to be a success in South Africa. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity and the platform.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are done now with the questions about who or what the issue is. We are done about dealing with the expectations. Thank you very much, Tim Drone Council. Thank you very much, Tim Gibbs. Thank you very much, Tim VETS. May we now take a breath, a deep breath, and go to the 2 presentations that will be delivered by Mr. Sean Ledley and Ms. Kerry Enslin. You have heard the issues raised. Please respond to those and please present as you deem fit. The platform is yours, Mr. Ledley and Ms. Enslin. And after that, we're going to have discussions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to share my screen. I would appreciate it if you could tell me when you see it. Are you able to see it? It's a SA drone regulations.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to spend about 5 minutes chatting with you about the question that we posed for this week's webinar was, are regulations barriers to entry or enablers to the booming industry? But before we can answer that question, we need to have a discussion on, sorry, I'm having a, we need to have a discussion on a couple of questions that keep coming up. We need to understand, how are we as South African aviators regulated? What is South African civil aviation's obligations to us and the industry? Why are they there? What do they do for us? How did we end up with these regulations? I hear a lot of people, they talk about 101, they all know the numbers, the names, but how did they end up there? What can you do if these regulations are not working for you? And then lastly, we'll chat about what we have already done. Okay, South Africa, how are we as South African aviators regulated? The South African Civil Aviation Authority is an overarching authority that assists with the development, support of regulations, and it enforces safety and security. Their purpose to you and me and to anybody that uses airspace is to ensure that the airspace that we share is safe. It needs to be safe for everybody that moves in it, with zero accidents and incidences. How did we end up with this regulation that everyone's talking about? They talk about this 101. How did we get it? So I'll take you back a couple of years. The first international convention on civil aviation, which we commonly know as the Chicago Convention, came into effect in 1947. The primary objective of this document produced at the Chicago Convention is the development of civil aviation in a safe and orderly manner, and the establishment of air transport services on the basis of equality of opportunity and operated soundly and economically. The International Air Transport Network is one of the greatest practical examples of international cooperation. By ensuring that the network functions, this means making sure that everybody is following the same rules when they are operating within an airspace. ICAO is also part of researching new air transport policies. They standardize inventions, they explore latest developments, they provide governments with advice on establishing new international standards, and they do recommendations for practices for civil aviation. So the strength of ICAO as an organization lies in its ability to bring together a large number of countries and forge international agreements. However, you do need to understand that ICAO is not the global regulator. It has no power to police our skies. That is left up to the independent country civil aviation authorities. So South Africa is one of 193 countries that belong to ICAO, and we base our regulations closely on recommendations made by various ICAO committees. South African Civil Aviation is a public entity that reports to the Department of Transport. So once ICAO has sat, South African Civil Aviation has sat, and a regulation has been agreed upon. Once it has gone through the formal process of CAA, it gets promulgated into the civil aviation regulations, and then work gets done on the South African CATS, the technical standards, which is the documentation that assists industry, you and me, to explain how do we use the regulation? How do we take something and make it practical for us? So a very, very simplistic example I can give you is a regulation will tell you, you need to have an RPL if you want to fly a drone. The technical standard will tell you, how do you get to that RPL? What training you need to do, what fees you need to pay, all of these different components. The CAA also uses aeronautical information and technical guidance material as part of explaining how do we use the regulations. And so it's come up this in the beginning of this webinar, and I've heard it repeatedly on many different channels. What do we do if you do not agree with the regulations? We hear statements like regulations need to change. They need to become inclusive. People say things like, because the law is so badly designed, it's easier for me just to fly illegally. I've heard statements of the law is designed to protect those who can afford it. These are all things that come up. We hear them, and we want to, I just want to spend a minute to say to you, as we hear your concerns, we hear the problems, we hear the lack of what is out there. So what do you do if the regulation's not working for you? There's a couple of avenues. First of all, it's always recommended that you engage with the CAA. If you're a company or an individual operator, you can speak to your POI, the person you deal with that helps you with certification, licensing department, any of these people. If you don't come right with them, you can attend one of the informal industry liaison forums. The South African CAA hosts these industry liaison forums in various different areas of aviation. The one that is most of interest to us is called the RPAS Liaison Forum. The Drone Council does attend these meetings, and we will, a little bit later in this webinar, we will discuss with you where we are, what we've heard, what we've seen, and where we plan on going. And then it is also always a good idea to engage with an association that works in the sector that you are interested in. So just you being present today on this Drone Council platform means you've engaged with an association that is interested in your concerns and is willing to work towards making changes and developing. Once we have now had these discussions and we understand where the problems occur, we will then begin to enter the formal process of the civil aviation, whereby a submission will be made into the regulatory committee, we call that CARCOM, and the Drone Council and ATOSA already started a process to work on the change of regulations more than 2 years ago. So we are here to tell you that your voices have been heard and we understand the problems that are out there. I'm going to put into the chat box, here is a couple of formal organizations that you can get involved with, you can communicate with if you want to take this further. If you don't want to talk on the webinar, please drop any of these people an email, get in touch with us, and we can talk further and we can help you unpack what we do and don't understand. And then I would like to please ask Mr. Sean Ledley, who is the president of ATOSA, which is the Aviation Training Organization of South Africa, to explain the process of which we have already engaged with CAA regarding regulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ledley. Thank you, Ms. Enslin. Now, Mr. Ledley, please come on board. Before he comes on board, I notice that, let's check on the chat. For all the webinars, there is a link that you can go to on YouTube. Go to the chat, you'll see that. You'll catch up on information of last week, you'll catch up on this one. And then that's the next one. Then there's not much. It was just names. May people who are appearing here without their names, please name yourselves for the purpose of the records. You don't come as 3943441. We will put you on the waiting room. We just want to make sure that we know the people that have attended, please. That's why 3 people are sitting on the waiting room. There are email addresses that have been put by Ms. Kerry Enslin. You can use those for the processes that I've spoken about. Mr. Little, go ahead, please.
Good day, Chair. I'm terribly sorry, my lighting is not very good, so you can't see my face, so please excuse the video. I'll just share my presentation. I'd like to say thank you, Kerry, for the explanation, and I will be starting shortly. So, Chair, can you just talk for 5 minutes while I get things on the go? I'm in a different office and I'm trying to get things sorted out here. Apologies.
We will not run short of what to say. Miss Enslin, are you ready to take questions on the presentation that you just made?
100% I'm ready for questions.
Okay, thank you. If you had to summarize in 3 lines what you just said, what would your message be?
My summary is that we all see the civil aviation as this big beast. And you know what? They're not. They're approachable. We just have to approach them in the right manner, at the right discussion. There are committees, there are liaison forums that we can go into and we can speak. They are not an organization to be afraid of. They are there and they are willing to listen.
Go ahead. What happened to you now?
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so that's what I would just like to say. The CAA is there and they're an organization to assist us. We all have the same goal in mind. We all want to fly safely. So if there's anyone that has questions or a comment.
So, Ms. Enslin, I can take over and I can just explain to the audience what we have been up to over the last 2 years.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'd like to reiterate with Kerry that the CAA is exceptionally well renowned and rates very highly internationally. They have a panel of experts that focus on drones, and you can approach them and they will assist you. Again, it's always better to approach them through an association that understands the language and understands the terminology and the structures. So we, the Drone Council and ATOSA embarked 2 years ago on a comprehensive consultative process, and we consulted with government, the security clusters, the SOEs, varsity students, drone pilots, and industry. Now, to give you some background, ATOSA is the Association of Training Organizations of South Africa, and we fall under the umbrella of CASA, which is the Commercial Association of Aviation for Southern Africa. And the name of the amendment that we worked on is called Part 71. This is the licensing actions for all drone-related licenses. So if you've got a license, it should be referenced and you'll be able to go to Part 71 and see exactly what you need in order to achieve that license. Now, again, this document, before we submitted it, there was over 1,400 man-hours put into it. So it's a comprehensive document, and we're extremely dedicated to this document. This is a guideline, and we believe that this will unlock and assist most of the questions and most of the frustrations. Please bear in mind that the CAA has no authority to just grant exemptions and give you permission for this, that, and the next thing. It is a formal process, because we always lose sight of the fact that drones is aviation, right? So you need to have quality and safety at the forefront of any changes that could possibly be made. Bearing in mind that even if you believe it's a small toy, it can still get up to high enough altitude to cause damage to a full-size aircraft with passengers in it. So there is always that element that you have to respect. And if you keep that respect and you have constant safety in your mind, you will get on well with the industry. These are some of the people we engaged with. We engaged with 6 universities. We engaged with various government organizations, South African Local Government Association, and then we discussed metros. We went to Eskom, Joburg Water, Rand Water, SAPS, TITA, Centec. This is just to name but a few. And then we engaged with the technical colleges, and there's 168 colleges that we engaged with just to get our feedback. Now, we broke it all down after all of that engagement, is root cause analysis, and what we found out, and it's quite evident from the questions that we're getting today, and this is 2 years on. Obviously, there's more questions and more people are exposed to it, so the questions seem more obvious now than they did 2 years ago. But that is the lack of clarity. It's easier just to break the law if the law is confusing. And that's what we're seeing quite a bit of. Bear in mind, there's over 300,000 unregistered drones in the country. So we're on the cusp of things getting a little bit chaotic, and we need to be careful of that. And we can't condone illegal operators, because we have to be sure that everybody is aware of the rules and how to operate and what to do in case there is an incident or an emergency. So with the no regulations giving guidance, that was the issue, because people were just buying drones and using them as and when they wanted, which just created more resistance by industry, more resistance or more caution by the regulator, and then it's one side pushing the other. So we as the Drone Council, we engaged and we built bridges, and we're trying to disseminate the information, understand the points of view, so that everybody is on the same page, so we can grow this industry together. Thirdly, all of the regulations were tied into technical, into training procedures manuals and technical guidance materials. So it wasn't available. You couldn't just go online, especially if you're a researcher, and find it. It was really, you had to go look all over the place. So this is now this might seem very confusing, it might seem very tedious, and it might seem very delayed, but this is the process that we followed. So please understand that it was a very, very thorough consultative process. We engaged with full-size operators, full-size instructors, we engaged with air traffic controllers. We really made sure that we had covered all of our bases. And even when you think you've covered all your bases, there's more bases to come. So we started off, and the first thing we did is you make your submission once you've written it to the Civil Aviation Regulatory Committee. They approve it for the consideration, and then it went to a subcommittee. The subcommittee deliberates, and then we broke into work groups where we actually go down, and it's more of an informal discussion in the work groups, and work groups are open to the public. So everybody who says, oh, what's going on? Why isn't it changing? You must remember that this is a two-way communication process. Industry or the public needs to put their case forward and tell the operator what their challenges are. The operator doesn't sit in work groups like this or scan social media. They're the regulator, they're busy regulating. So they are kind enough to host work groups, which is open to the general public. And this is where the discussions are held. They're very productive because it opens the communication bridges and lets people understand the concerns from both sides. So we went to one work group, two work groups. We then went back to the ASO subcommittee just to get some guidance and give an update of how our progress. The document wasn't ready, so we went to another work group, Then we went back to the ASO subcommittee. They gave us some more guidance. We pushed it back to one work group, 2, 3, we had 4 work groups. And this is the formal process that you need to participate in. Obviously, if the document isn't as technical as this one, there are fewer work groups, but we had to cover all bases. We then, out of courtesy, went to the Drone Industry Liaison Forum, and we got some valuable inputs there. So now so that's in 2022. So this process so far has been 2 years. We then had 3 more work groups. I went back to the ASO subcommittee, and then the document was published in the Government Gazette for public comment.
All right.
It was published for public comment. We went back to the regulatory committee, and we dealt with those issues. There was only one query which we CARCOM deliberated, and they pushed us to the ASO subcommittee one more time. And so that is in total over the 2 years, there's been 18 formal meetings. There's another, the final work group coming up, which will be next week. And then quite possibly this will go to get promulgated and made into law. Now, this sounds very, very tedious. However, this is the process, and that is why we started it 2 years ago. And what I put to the audience is, if you want change to happen, you can't sit back and wait for somebody else to do it. If it's important to you and you feel it's holding you behind, or the country behind, or industry behind, you really need to get involved. You have to have your voice heard. Everyone, we're in a democratic country with a fantastic constitution, and everyone's voice is important. So if you want your voice heard, you have to make it heard. You have to go and talk in the right environments to the right people respectfully, and you will get your point across. Now, this is the main point that I think is appropriate to everyone, that everyone will see how this Part 71 will actually affect you. And basically,
Mr. Ledley.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so that we do not go too far, there was a question that was asking, what was the purpose of the submission? No, don't take out that slide. I was hoping that as you close, you will then talk to it and say, this is what we did, this is what is there, then so that we can allow for a healthy discussion after that.
Certainly, Chair. That's I was speaking fast because this is the last slide, and this is the purpose of the submission. I didn't want to detract everyone with questions before. I just wanted them to understand the hard work that the Drone Council and ATOSA has put in on their behalf, and what impact this will have to the industry. So, although if you need an ROC to fly highly technical missions, and you need an ROC if you want to rent out your drone. However, as we've stated in many Wednesday webinars, is a drone a toy, a tool, or an aircraft? Now, this regulation speaks to the fact that a drone is a tool. And this is very restrictive, and it is not going to be good enough for everybody, but it's a beachhead into the regulatory process. And what this does is it says, if you've gone through the training and you are a qualified pilot, for your own purposes, you are allowed to fly a drone, not in controlled airspace, not above people, not above 40 meters, if your feet are on the ground, and then there's a weight limit of 1 kilogram. So what this will do is, if you are a roof inspector, you can use the drone instead of a ladder, but you are not allowed to use a drone instead of a ladder for someone else, for your own purposes. And that is what that would do. Now, everyone has said that this is what they want. Everyone said this is what they need. But in order to push this over the line, obviously the regulator needs to hear it from more than just 2 associations. So I thank you. I just wanted to let you know what we've been doing in the background for the last 2 years. and I welcome any questions moving forward.
Right. We started with people asking questions before the presentation. We did this class differently. So can I then go, NDO, please switch off your video. I don't know. You are. Yes, thank you. I'm going to ask directly. Notando, Dumi, are your questions answered? Please repeat your questions. And then Tando and Bongega, please repeat your questions. And then also Mr. Korombi, repeat your questions in 10 seconds. Just repeat the questions so that the two presenters you can be sure. Say if they've been answered or not, but just repeat them for the purposes of the recording. Let's go,
Sure.
Notando, and then Tando. Then we'll go
Sure.
Dumi. Yebo.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Chair. Our question was around understanding, would it be viable for CAA to actually create a separate body that then fast tracks the regulation processing, as opposed to it, so a separate body being created within the CAA. So if maybe Mr. Ledley could answer and Ms. Enwood.
All right, then.
And then, sorry, then the second question was unpacking the ambiguity around what a drone operator can and cannot do. And I think, Sean, towards the end, in terms of when you were speaking about the two associations that have asked that's what they need in terms of the differentiation of using the drones, whether they be a roof inspector and how they would use it. It's partially answered, but if we could maybe drill it a bit deeper to really make it so that it's easily understandable for people when they want to look, whether they're in the industry or outside of the industry, understanding what exactly it is that they can and can't do with as a drone operator.
Okay, Dumi, a question?
Okay, so Notando has covered the two questions that we actually had. Thank you.
Ando and Bongega, your questions?
Okay, from my point, Chair, thank you. My issue was just based on accessibility of regulations to people. And I think in Mr. Sean Lintley's presentation, he covered a big part of that. I think this change in regulation would definitely make regulations and the use of the drones more accessible to members of the public who are licensed. So in that perspective, my question's been answered.
Bongega, your question?
Thank you, Chair. My question was just about what the future looks like for small business owners in terms of owning and flying their own drones commercially and not recreationally or illegally. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Kupega, Sanele, your question?
Thank you, Chair. My question was one on those committees or forums that Ms. Enslin spoke about. Where can one access them? To Mr. Lately, my question will be around the pushment or the advancement of having an ROC light. Is there some hopes that we?
Go on. And then I think you're done. Mr. Shadrach Korombi, your question?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Chair. For us, the issue is more of expectations, but it has been answered by Mr. Ledley in his presentation. It was, how the Drone Council is actively playing a role in enabling the regulations to promote the drone economy, and also how are they, what strategies are they adopting in order to improve to be a bigger voice within the drone industry, with the different stakeholders. And I see here that we were not aware of ATOSA's role in trying to enable regulations that are for the betterment of and the advancement of drone technologies in South Africa. But I would just like to know how the government, if there's a specific government entity that is playing a bigger role in enabling this, the enabling regulations, because we see
No,
that
no presentations. You have already presented. Just wanted to summarize the question.
Yeah. Also, my question would be: we have seen in other e-hailing services that regulations that were set are not being supportive. So, in these regulations that are being developed now with the help of the Drone Council and ATOSA, how are they going to be supportive to the entire drone industry? Thank you.
Thank you. That will be the first round of questions. You'll respond to them. I have noted two other hands, Mr. Delani Zwane and Mr. Zaid, drone pilot. I'll come back to you. I will take this round of your answer, then we'll take the next round, then we will close. You are noted, Mr. Zaid and Mr. Delani Zwane. Mr. Ledley and Ms. Enslin, please respond.
Okay, if I may take this, Ms. Enslin.
100%.
Okay, I thank you very much for some very interesting questions. So we're gonna unpack that. So let's start with what strategy are we adopting to have our voices heard? Well, the strategy we've adopted as the Drone Council is we've aligned with other MPOs that have more experience in the regulations. Not that we are unexperienced, just the fact that we are only 2 years old. So we need to get our name and our voice out there. So the basic strategy is we've been working very, very hard. We've been attending all of those meetings. We've been preparing for those meetings. We've done the research. So when we attend these meetings, we know what we're talking about. We have our facts and we put a strong case forward. That is the most important weapon you can have when you enter any meeting or any conversation. So it's definitely hard work. Secondly, when you ask if there's any government departments playing a role, well, we've mentioned that the DSCA is the government department that is playing the role. And they made this, although everybody likes to give them a hard time, they have played their role because they've made their resources available. They've lent their ear and they've listened and they've considered, and they haven't agreed with everything we've had to say, but they have listened, considered it, and then we always meet some middle ground. So that is what we do. Now, the most important question here, I believe, isn't what the government's doing for you, right? Because you know what you want, but what have you done? You haven't spoken to government. You haven't told government what you need. You haven't told government how this regulation will impact the life of you and your family. You haven't told the government how this will change the uptake of the drone economy. You haven't told the government exactly what your requirements are, your expectations are. So how, so from that point of view, how is government meant to know? As I said before, the regulator's job isn't to sit on social media. The regulator's job is to put their resources available, open the forums, and it is our jobs as citizenry to attend and make our voices heard. If your voice isn't heard, you're not going to get listened to. And if you're not speaking, you can't complain that nobody's listening. Now, with regards to what you can and can't do, as Ms. Enslin explained earlier, there are two sets of regulations. The one is the regulations, and the one is the technical standards. So the regulations, which is what I displayed earlier, the regulations is what is allowed, right? So, and they're very broad. After we get that promulgated, and I would assume that the people with these concerns would support and have to get their voices heard to assist getting this promulgation. It might be an email, it might be attend a meeting, but you need to put your time in. You need to put your time in to have your voices heard. If government thinks that nobody wants this, they're not going to prioritize it. That's the bottom line. Then after this has been promulgated and put into law, then we'll get busy with the technical standards, and that will be the exactly how to, what to, where to, right? So that hasn't been determined yet, but this is just the benchmark of what is going to be possible, and then we will work through it. Now, with regards to the second, third, fourth question about the ROC light. Now, we coined this phrase a while ago, and it's a very good concept, all right? However, there is some development going on in the background in which we heavily engaged in, and there's going to be an open category for very small drones, and that should be coming online very shortly, or into the process very short, in the beginning of next year. And the ROC light, that will take a little bit further to develop because that will involve the Aviation Act, not just the regulations. So I hope that I hope I've answered your questions, but the most important point there is you must remember, in order for government to assist you, you need to tell them what you need assistance with. Otherwise, they will assist you and then everybody says they don't know what they're doing. But how can they know unless you tell them? And there is formal channels to do that. Thank you.
Okay, the second round of questions. Liven, you had your hand up. Then it will be Liven, Zaid, Delani, and Sipogazi. So I'll repeat back to back. Liven, Zaid, Delani, and Sipogazi.
Chairperson, I'm fine, thanks. I've been answered.
Okay, thank you. Your question was what was the objective of the submission for the amendment of Part 71? And you have been answered. Thank you. Zaid and Delani and Ms. Sipogazi.
Yeah, I just had a question about the cost effect of having an ROC, you know. Specifically, see if you work a handful of pilots, like 3 or 4 pilots, to pay such an exorbitant amount, it's a bit lot. So I want to know if CIA are ever considering like to drop their costs, you know, per pilot. Like obviously if you reach a certain amount of pilots, then you cover the full cost. Because for a single pilot, if you're starting up your own company, it's way too much to get your own ROC.
Okay. At times when we speak about these things in aviation, we say, you see the issue of the RPAS, it's a problem because of the ROC, and Part 71 has not been addressed because of the CAA. We speak 11 acronyms without other people understanding. So it will help that we become slow in our questioning and when we answer. But I will request that those that are answered and try and simplify it for other people who might be not necessarily in the sector, but the questions are well understood. So that was Zaid, Delani, and Ms. Sipogazi and Heiko.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank this opportunity. I think we welcome as a public the presentation. It's very good and very clear. But I think the most important part that we are missing, and the most fundamental part that we are missing, mostly it's the issue of transformation policy. I think that's where the government or the private sector fail most of the time, people at grassroots level, because sometimes such things are designed and does not speak to people on the ground. And what happens to those people on the ground hoping to reach the point whereby they need to be heard? You know, I think the transformation policy will assist to get people on the ground, their wishes and their voices to be heard as well.
All right, Mr. Zwane Mangete, let me challenge you. If you had to be in the CAA for a week, what would your transformation program be? I want to understand what is it that you think must be transformed?
Well, Chair, I think that could be another discussion for another day, Chair, because it's quite a lot that needs to be addressed.
Okay,
Mr. I will not be allowed. Sorry.
Mr. Zwane, I'm not attacking you. We as South Africans, we see problems many times. Now I'm giving you an opportunity. All of us must ask that question to say, can we just say 2 things that you think must be transformed? Then
I think, Chair, to make justice into this, we would get maybe a proper platform to address such things. I think by so doing right now, I don't think it's doing justice.
Okay, thank you. I will go next to Ms. Ms. Sipokazi Nwiza and Mr. Heiko Kun.
Thank you, Chair. My question is directed to Sean, as he had earlier alluded that there is a possibility of having RPL Lite. So I wanted to know if there is a possibility of getting a drone simulator training program on that RPL Lite. Will CAA allow that?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Heiko Kun. Heiko Kun, your hand is still up, you're not talking, yeah?
Yes, good day, Chair. Sorry, I just had a comment, just carrying on from what Sean and the rest of the panel have been discussing. Probably just need 2 minutes to just read provide you with the comment, and I think it will answer some of the questions, but also provide more discussion items. So yeah, firstly, I just wanted to say thank you very much for setting up this platform. I think these platforms are incredibly important. There's a number of them, and each one of them are incredibly important, so that the conversations of this very important technology and this breakthrough technology, carries on breaking the ground as it has. So yeah, just a few notes from myself from what we discussed. I'm a CEO of a prolific drone services company. But before that, before I've been involved in this for the 7 years, I've also been in manned aviation. So I sort of see it from both sides of the bench when we start talking about regulations. So on the point of regulations, I'm of the opinion that the drone community, including those that are studying or wanting to get involved in drones, need a lot more education when it comes to general aviation. A lot of what we hear is why regulation should change, to improve the drone industry. It is very scarce that we hear, look, this is how we want to change the regulations, and this is how they must change. And this is also how we have considered that the airspace in general and manned aviation will stay safe. We need to remember it's not a one-way street. What is often beneficial for us financially is not safe nor compliant in terms of aviation standards. Then just with regards to the questions of transformation and economic inclusion, which I think is a very important topic within this industry. I am certainly of the opinion that the industry at large needs to start opening their minds in terms of what is possible in the industry. There are many opportunities within the drone industry that don't require a ROC, so an operator certificate, or an ASL, the air service license, or an RPL or drone license. For example, in our business, my turnover from the drone services business, drone acquisition is about 20% and data processing is about 80%. So there are many other opportunities for those who are not specifically aviation minded. I'm starting to get concerned by the number of RPLs we are pushing out in this country at a massive rate. Yet there are less than 90 ROCs, all working in different disciplines. So it's my opinion that we need skills, not RPLs. Thank you very much for allowing me to provide that comment.
Okay, very interesting issues raised by Mr. Heiko Kun. And in a way, you were addressing the issues raised by Mr. Delani Zwane. And when I went back to him, he thought that I was pouncing on him. It's because I wanted us to make progress, that we are very good in South Africa in defining the problem. No, not in defining the problem, in spelling the problem, in saying, this is the problem, this is the problem. Then I say, okay, fine, guys. I'm locking this door. We're all sitting here. We're not leaving. Let's unpack what the problem is. Once you have unpacked the problem statement, then let's have coffee. After tea, we discuss what is the solution statement. Let's discuss what the proposed solutions are. And then people run away. They don't want to deal with the second part of the future that we desire. And the next discussions, the next presentations in the next week also will be about the future that we desire. We cannot continuously be throwing stones at various parties without describing the future that we seek to see. So, Mr. Ledley, and Ms. Enslin will respond now, but Mr. Haikokon has already responded to some of those things. Notando, on a second bite, then we'll take the last round of responses.
I just wanted to highlight in terms of what Mr. Haikokon was saying in terms of the ecosystem of the drone industry. I think that's a very important aspect that needs to be looked at in terms of from a skills development point of view. And what he's highlighting to say 80% of his business comes from the data analysis aspect of it. That is also something that I think when we look at introducing people into the industry, the exposure to just really looking at the industry from a 360 point of view and not just looking at it as a drone pilot operator as the entry point. That would be something that I think as an association or as part of knowledge dissemination is an important aspect to be included into.
Okay, so what I'm hearing before there are responses is that we all sort of understand the problem, one, and two, we understand that there must be an inclusive ecosystem. And we do understand that at one level, as I said, at one level, you've got those that are pushing for economic growth, economic inclusion, and accelerated innovation. That's all, that all comes together. But the truth of the matter is that regulators do not make laws. Regulators regulate what is there. And regulators can only amend the regulations if you have gone through the processes that have been put. And if you are not participating in processes of ensuring through a transformatory regulatory regime, you can have the regulations that you had in 2012, 2015, 2025 without being changed. Regulations don't change themselves, don't amend themselves. It's all about public participation. At the same time, we should be saying, by the way, South African regulators are amongst the best in the world. The South African Civil Aviation has been getting all sorts of awards, and we are currently, as South Africa, chairing the International Civil Aviation Organization. So we're highly respected globally. But we need to balance both economic inclusion on the one hand and what aviation is about, which is safety. So what I am summarizing is that the next discussions will be no longer about stating the problem, or the problem statement will be about what is to be done, what is the future that we seek to achieve. You can see on top of that screen, it says Operation Catch Up 2023, disrupting digital futures, drone economy disrupting digital futures. We proclaimed this in 2020 when we launched the Drone Council and say, let us get into these painful, conversations, the painful things to be done, and not just throw stones at one another. May I now, recognizing that it is 15:25, we don't want this Drone Wednesdays to go more than 90 minutes. They are good classes. They are going on YouTube. When you listen to it, it should not be more than 1.5 hours. May I request Mr. Ledley to round up, and then we will then make announcements. I do not see any other hands. Mr. Ledley, any response or anything that has been left as a gap? Thank you, Mr. Haiko.
Yes. I want to thank Mr. Kuhn for bringing up his points. And I want everybody to understand to get a ROC is not the end goal. If you invest all your time and money in an ROC, that's just a starting point of your business, right? And so there are a lot of other qualifications and opportunities within the drone space. First of all, there's quality managers, there's safety managers, there's persons responsible aircraft, there's RPAS maintenance technicians, there's spotters, there's logistics coordinators, and that's just within the ROC space. I'm glad to hear Mr. Kuhn spoke about the fact that the drone is a vehicle to gather data for his data processing business. So essentially, his business is a data processing business, which uses the ROC as a mechanism to access the data that he requires in a cost-effective manner, because he uses a drone as opposed to a helicopter. So people must look at it furthermore past just having an ROC. Secondly, I'd like to address the transformation agenda. There is a transformation agenda. However, it's very difficult to transform an industry when there is no growth. This industry is at the genesis of its development. It's right at the beginning. So what it is to transform this industry is getting the regulations correct, building the right pathway so people can understand clearly what needs to be done to move to the next level. And then government does allocate the resources towards transformation. The perfect example of that is what was actually criticized in the next point. There's too many RPLs without ROCs. Now that has been identified, and that is the reason why we need the support of public to get Part 71 put through and to get it made into law, because then all of those RPLs that everyone thinks there's too many of actually will have an opportunity to use their skill within their own business or for themselves. So if that is the case, then there aren't too many RPLs. In fact, there's far too few RPLs. And then we need to start training more. So it's just a different perspective. And this is the plea to people. If you want this rule to unlock if you want the rule to unlock this industry, you need to get involved, be it an email, be it attending a meeting, be it attending a webinar. But if your voice isn't heard, we're just talking to ourselves. And then on the very last note, I want to talk about the regulator. Now, it's always easy to throw stones at the regulator because they're not opening it up. They're not making it available. However, please remember that the regulator, when there is an accident and somebody gets hurt, the first person everyone points a finger at is the regulator. So they sit in the middle and they sit in a very hard spot, and they are doing a good job. So thank you very much. Chair, if you can take it from there.
Thank you very much. The time is 15:29. This conversation is on YouTube. And next Wednesday, we are meeting on the same link, same time. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we very interesting about this event. We started at this platform being 75 or so. Some people went out to the waiting room. We are ending after 90 minutes of intense discussion at 70, and people have not been jumping out. So we are challenging everybody to come to the next session next Wednesday, same place, same time, same link, but we will be doing more detail. What we will be dealing with next week is going to the meat of it. We'll pick 1 or 2 sectors to show as examples, but we are discussing the issue of what is to be done. Next week, we're discussing focus for 2023. When we say catch up 2023, what are the things that need to be done between 2023 and 2025, but starting with 2023 for South Africa to go to the 3rd floor or to the 4th floor? How do we make South Africa globally competitive? Let's stop talking, let's do it. When we say transformation, we should be saying what is transformation. Mr. Haikokon, I'd like you to come next week and take your points further, and all the speakers that spoke here today, I'd like you to take these points further. We're not talking general, we are getting more into details and getting real case studies. We'll invite 1 or 2 international speakers who are still waiting for their confirmation. We'll invite regulators to also engage. We'll try to make this thing, we started at 4 minutes, we are at 5 minutes past 2, we're ending now at 3:30, so it's hardly 90 minutes. But be prepared, all of you. Thanks for the session. You can find it on our YouTube. We will not close the link now. If you want to raise any question that you think must be addressed next week, just put it on the chat. We'll keep the chat open for the next, we'll stop the recording, but we'll keep the chat open for the next 5 to 10 minutes for all questions that you want to be addressed next week. We'll meet Wednesday, the 7th of December. It is International Civil Aviation Day. So we're going with a bang next week. With a bang, we are discussing, we are saying, with aviation being more than a century old, what is the future of aviation? Are drones the new future of aviation? What does it mean? So let's come wearing that hat, celebrating International Civil Aviation Day next week on Wednesday, the 7th of December. And all the speakers that spoke here will be asking them to take it from 2nd floor to the 4th floor. Thank you very much. This session is closed, and we'll talk next week. Colleagues, invite as many friends as possible. Thank you very much for your participation. As I sign out, my name is Ivan Peñane, the chairperson of the Drone Council. I thank all the speakers. I thank all our directors. I thank the GIBS team. I thank the VETS team. I thank the regulators that have been sitting very quietly. Thank you very much. Please, regulators and all academics, come back next week, Wednesday, 2 o'clock. Thank you. Bye. This session ends here now.